Hey, this is Craig. We're at Goods and Guitars here in Odessa, Texas. Today I'm in the studio, and the video you're about to watch was a culmination of working on multiple different things at multiple times. Any of the openers that I shot didn't really work out for it, and so I'm doing one now. So what you're going to watch is we're going to glue the back on to the instrument that we were working on. Then we're going to work on the neck itself, and we're going to cut the truss rod channel, get the truss rod fitted, and then as I was working, we actually got into the fretboard and got into how we were going to do the inlays, and that was going to make the video run really long, and so it's going to end kind of abruptly. And then the next video after that, we'll get into that, and I'm not real sure how I'm going to edit it out, but the fact of the matter is, it is what it's going to be. So I'm going to go ahead and get that pushed out to you, and the series should be, we're going to get the neck with the truss rod in, and then we're going to do the fretboard, then we're going to fret it and get it attached and do all that, but the fretboard's already done. It's just not in the video yet. So today, when I'm actually out there working after I push this out, I'm probably going to be working on the soundboard, getting the rosette done, and that'll be the video number, because this is 3, so 4 will be fretting and inlays, so 5 should be doing the soundboard and getting the soundboard glued on. And then after that, it's gonna be pretty quick, because once the box is closed and we get the neck shaped and everything in there, pretty much it's gonna be final sanding and getting everything laid out for getting the bridge where it needs to be, and we'll talk about intonation and scale length and all that. So we're kind of on the downhill run. It's just, I got so many other projects going, that these kind of get behind. We're also going to be building a guitar for Stoney LaRue. I'll be shooting some of that video in between these videos. So I've babbled on here for about 2 minutes and 40 seconds, and I'm just going to shut up, and we're going to cut into where we're at on the Bajo Quinto build, episode 3. So I appreciate you guys watching. I've got a lot of new subscribers. So actually what I'm going to do is I will cut a video at the end of this one, and I'll call out all the new followers that I've got that are part of the sub club. And so y'all can stick around for that part and see if your name's in this video. But it's picking up. I mean, I don't have millions of subscribers. I've got like 154, but I've probably picked up 30 of those in the last 2 weeks. So if y'all could share this video everywhere possible, tell your buddies about it. If you think it's cool, maybe they will, and we'll build this channel up, and we'll do a lot of cool stuff, at least what I think's cool, and obviously 154 of you think it's cool, and I really appreciate that. So smash the bell, hit the like button. Let's try to get, I got 154 followers, so let's do 50 likes. See if we can get 50 likes on this video. That would be awesome. That would be, I think, the most that I've had. So I'm really starting to enjoy it. It gets easier as time goes on. I'm starting to learn that, how to edit this and cut these. So you may see me in 16 different shirts during the process of all this, but it's y'all are smart enough to know it doesn't happen all in one day. So here we go. Hello, this is Craig. We're at Goods and Guitars here in Odessa, Texas, and this is episode 3 of the Bajo Quinto build. Like I've stated before, any of the procedures that I'm doing here will work for a 12-string or 6-string acoustic guitar. Where we were at last time is we got the back beveled, everything notched, the braces cut, and what I've done since then is I've beveled the top, because you want to make sure that you get the front and back beveled before you glue either one on, because you won't be able to lock it down and do it the way I do it. So I bevel the top and the back. What we're going to do today is glue the back on, then we're going to do some neck work. Okay, so we got our top, we got our back beveled like we did last time.
we talked about making a new jig, and this is what I've come up with. Basically what we've got here is a piece of 3/4 inch plywood that was cut to the size, and then I've got some tubing, clear tubing, and I drilled holes in it and then screwed it down, and then we're going to use this as our pressure clamp, and then we're going to use 4 Bessie clamps. So that's how we're going to do it. I've already done a couple of dry runs to make sure that everything is going to go to plan, and so I'm just going to double check and make sure our seams are lined up, and then we'll put some glue on here and clamp it. Now I'm going to clamp here to the head block, here to the tail block, and then light pressure here on the sides. That way I can flip this over and clean up any squeeze out that's on the inside. So you want to be sure that you don't clamp it in a fashion that you can't flip it around, because getting that glue out of there is a lot easier after about 15 minutes. If you wait too long, it gets real complicated and it drives you crazy. So this is just regular tight bond, and I'm just making sure we got a thin film all the way around. In any places that I think it might not be enough, I'll add a little bit more. And then there's quite a bit of sanding that's going to happen on the outside once we get everything glued on. So I'm not too worried about squeeze out there. But on the inside, the less I have to clean up, the better. Seams lined up in the back. And then I'll put a little pressure there and a little pressure in the front, and then we will go back around and keep cranking them down until what I'm doing right now is just making sure we got good with the seams closing up. And it's closing up. And then these will go right here. Now you don't want to put a whole lot of pressure on this one because it's right on the side, and so I'm gonna look, and I'm just putting enough to close it up. All right, so we're gonna let that dry. We'll come back, we'll get started on the neck. All right, so here's our blank. And how I got to this point is this is a piece of rosewood. I want to say it's, I don't know where it came from. I got it from LaRose Guitars. He sells woods also, but it is a form of rosewood. I just like the way the board looked. And so I laid everything out, did the scarf joint, and got my angle for my headstock, and then I chopped off chunks of it and then glued it back up to get the heel. And what we're going to do now is get ready to cut the truss rod channel and go from there. Then we'll start shaping the neck. One of the things that I do just to make my life a little bit easier is I drill a shallow hole and I put a dowel rod in. That way it doesn't show through when I shape the back of the neck, but it keeps the neck from shifting around when I go to glue it up, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then I do another dowel rod down here that goes all the way through to the heel that keeps these pieces from shifting around when I glue those up. So that's how I got to this point, and I'm going to adjust the camera angle and show you my layout process, and that way you kind of understand some more of the things that I did to get to this point. Alright, so this is my template that I made up for the necks for the Bajos. I have a different one for the 6 strings. And I laid this out on here, and when this board was this thick, and traced it out, and then I cut it out on the bandsaw. And the neck angle is a little different, and so I just kind of rotated it to get the headstock angle that I wanted. This excess material right here is going to be for the tenon that goes into the body. So I'll lay it out with this, and then it tells me, if you look right here, I've got these lines. This is the cut line. So I'll mark that cut line, so when I put it in the jig on the bandsaw to do the kerf cut, I know where to cut, so I end up with enough material. And we'll show you that here in just a second. Alright, so this is the jig. This is the neck blank that I have. I'm not going to cut this one. This is just for demonstration purposes, but it's kind of self-explanatory how it works. It's got the angle that I use, which is I believe this one is 7. It just clamps in, and then I'll turn the bandsaw on and run it through. And using the layout jig, I'll have a mark, and I'll adjust this way forwards and backwards till that mark lines up where it's going to come in contact with the blade. And then I just push it through, and it gives me that curve cut. And then you flip it around and glue it, and you're back in business. And that cuts out on run out issues and things that can happen when you have a neck that's cut from a pure stock of wood. One of the other things I do when I lay out the neck is I go ahead and lay out my these angles here and where the nut's at. That way when I put the truss rod in, I can measure off the center line and get that lined out. And then I'll lay out where the truss rod's going to go. And there's 2 ways that I do the truss rod channel. The truss rods I use are a 1/4 inch channel with a rounded bottom. So I'll usually do them with a 1/4 inch round bottom router bit. You can also do the same thing on a table saw. You just got to be very precise in what you're doing. So I'm probably going to go ahead and cut this one out and set up the router and use the router on it. So let's go ahead and get that part done. All right, so we're set up. We got half the distance from our material. That one needs to come back just a little bit. But we've got a 1/4 inch round bottom bit, and that's the bit that I use for the truss rods that I use. You'll have to, depending on what rod that you use, I use a low profile truss rod, the hot rod truss rod from Sumac. And it's like I said, 1/4 inch round over, and it's going to go 3/8 of an inch deep. So we're going to do it in 3 passes. That way we're not overloading the bit or anything. So we're going to go ahead and double check and make sure that everything is lined up, and then we'll go ahead and do the first pass. what I want to do now is I'm going to just set the rod down in here, and it's good and snug. We got a little bit of it's recessed just a bit, which is good. And so the next step will be to counter bore it for this part right here. So what we got to do at this point is we got to counter bore for the adjustment nut. And so I'm going to mark right here how far back I need to go, and then I'll put a mark all the way across just so it's easier for me to see it. And then I'm going to use this contraption. Since I don't have such a steep angle on my headstock, I had to buy this extension. This is just a Irwin. I got it from Home Depot. This is the counter bore for this truss rod that I got from Stuart McDonald. Basically, it goes in through here, and then it counter bores all the way back, so when the truss rod slides on, it's nice and tight. But in order for that to work like we want it to, we got to clamp a separate piece of material on top so the guide rod will stay in the channel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp it at that mark, that way I can see where I'm at and what I'm doing. Alright, now I want to check for fit. Alright, so we got it in, but now I got to take it back out because there's something I need to know. And I'm going to take my calipers, make sure we're zeroed out, and then 0.530 is how deep that is. And I'll write that down in my book that I keep for each guitar that I build. And then that tells me that if I turn it over this way and I measure down that distance, that's the bottom of the pocket, and I've got it laid out on the other side. That way when I start shaping the neck, I know how far I can go. And I got a 1/4 inch from the layout, so we're fine on that. But one thing I will do is, just to make sure, I'm going to lay this up here and then draw out where the bottom of the rod is at. So when I go in and cut this profile later, I'll know, because the last thing you want to do is start shaping your neck and have your truss rod blow out the back. And I personally have never done it, but I've worked on some guitars where that's happened. Alright, so the next step is laying out, making sure that everything is good with the fretboard and everything's lining up. But now I just got to find the fretboard. It's ebony. Has anyone seen it? There it is. Alright, so this is going to be the nut. and it should attach at the 12th fret. That's the tradition for the Bajo. Acoustic guitars usually attach at the 14th, but the Bajos attach at 12. And we're off a little bit, but it's not enough to worry about, because if we do go back to 12, because I will cut this off, not into the fretboard, just here, and the angle works, because I don't use this part, that way the nut's sitting down. So we're good there, we're good here. So what we need to do is figure out what we're going to do for the inlays, and then we need to get those done and then go ahead and get the frets put in. But we need to sand on this. I like to fret these off the guitar, because then I don't have to deal with building something to brace this when I'm whacking on it with a fretting hammer. So I'm going to sort out the process that I'm going to go with, and then I'll get back with y'all.